We do not own the rights to anything or any music that's heard during the duration of this podcast. Also, a lot of these shows will have explicit content. So if you are not a fan of any cursing or profanity, you may want to walk away, but that does not mean that every show will consist of such.
Are you serious? Like, we at season 7, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 seasons. Yeah, season 7. Magic number. If you know, you know. I'm not gonna go in depth with that, but yeah, this will be a very positive season. I don't know why and what's making me say that, but everything's changed. I'm still, like I said, stuff is very fluctuating now. I found that the connection with things is to get people to talk, as well as me taking time to talk. So you'll notice it, especially when you hear the first few episodes of this season. But it's just about sitting down and just having good talk, good conversation. Pass the message. Y'all know they ain't going nowhere. If you know, you know. If you've been around for a while, you already know how we give it up. But just hang in there. The content's amazing. The moves are even more amazing. And just put yourself in the right headspace to get this information. So hope y'all enjoy. What is up? What is going on? Episode 387 of The Pass is here. I am your host, as always, BT. And as I say all the time, we have yet another episode. I hope everyone's doing well. Hope you are staying cool, staying hydrated, maintaining your sanity, finding your peace, putting yourself around the right people for the right intentions and for the right purposes. I shared an interesting message on my social media about an hour or so ago. And it was a very eye-opening post, even for me to think about, because it makes you wonder or really think about the fact of, are there more people pouring into you or drinking from you? Are they pouring into your cup, or are they drinking from your cup? Because then that factors in how much energy or how much capacity you have to manage your everyday to-do activities. So I'm sharing that, and I'm kind of starting with that as like a icebreaker to get into the podcast today. It's going to be a real chill podcast. This is going to be a kind of sane flow, if you will. Ironically, I have I have one episode that I still need to edit that you all will hear. You should have heard it by now. Once I've got that edited, and then this one will be up right after it. And I guess we can kind of say we're officially close to 2 weeks into 41. And I will be open and honest in admitting the biggest takeaway or the biggest consistency that's been coming about is that there's been a lot more reflecting. There's been a lot more ability to kind of step back and really look at things and not just immediately evaluate or immediately make decisions without understanding why the decision is being made. And at first I didn't understand that or really think that was a big deal, but as I'm really starting to hone in on it, I really understand the importance of, like, everything does not require like immediate aggression or immediate friction. One of the things that I found saying, and I may have already said this last week, but I'm repeating it again, is I'm really working harder on the ideology and or the process of just being nicer to people and being nicer to myself. And for some people, it's like, well, what does that look like? Or what does that entail? Or what makes that such a big impact for you? And the reality is it's a big impact just off of the strength that I don't think we really understand that it's not it's not that we can't do it. It's just that we should do it for the sake of our personal well-being. And at times we may not realize how important our well-being is when we truly take the time to care about ourselves, to show ourselves the love, the attention, the affection, and the positivity that we deserve. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit. That was kind of my starting point as we go into this episode. I know it's been a minute. I know it's still in the title. Yes, from time to time I do talk about sports. Colorado University. Deion Sanders, prime time. Each week he's given us content without trying to give us content. And this week he did not cease to impress. So I'll give kind of the backstory and then we'll kind of get to where we are now. Week one, I think he flipped the needle very quickly with Colorado because they played TCU. So if you've been keeping up with college football, TCU was the runner-up in the national championship game at the beginning of the year. They played against Georgia. Georgia did what Georgia did. Georgia had a very solid run this past season in college football. I will give credit where it's due on that level. TCU was coming in to make an impact and start off, their season with one of their I believe it's a non-conference game against Colorado. And both Colorado and TCU were going back and forth with scoring, but in the end, it was Colorado pretty much was able to get the victory. And I think for his son who was the quarterback, he had, I think, 500 yards in his first game. He set a record for like most yards in the first game for a quarterback with Colorado, which was huge. Second game, I'm not going to lie to you. I will be 100% transparent. I was going for Colorado in this game regardless because they were playing Nebraska. And Nebraska's head coach is the Carolina Panthers' former head coach, Matt Rule. And Matt Rule really didn't work for Nebraska. Really didn't work for Carolina. So he looked, I think they let him go because he came from Baylor and he left Baylor to come to coach at Carolina. But I just don't think he had the culture understanding with college football from the NFL or to the NFL. In that game, they pretty much it was all Colorado. I think they might have scored 10. They didn't score that many points in that game, but it was all Colorado. And even more interesting, there was a lot of backstory behind that as far as because it was Colorado's first home game. The coaching staff kind of looked at it as they wanted to stand in the middle of the field, I guess, kind of doing their own thing, kind of setting the stage, if you will, and it was definitely set. So. Yeah, didn't really live up to the hype, at least on Nebraska side. I don't know if this is seen as a rivalry game, but I guess we're going to call it a rivalry game since it's the Battle of the Colorados coming up tonight. Colorado is going to be playing Colorado State. And the spark of the story has been the coach for Colorado State saying that my mom taught me, or I was taught growing up, that when you're talking to someone, you're supposed to not have your head on. You're supposed to not wear glasses so they can wear sunglasses or whatever. And a lot of people have made memes about this. A lot of people have made so many jokes about it, even down to photos have been shown of the coach for Colorado State doing post-game interviews with his sun visor hat on. So it's okay. And how Deion has handled it is he's literally he got the entire team a pair of sunglasses that are called prime sunglasses. And everyone is going to likely be wearing them at the game tonight. The game is tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard or Eastern Daylight. And personally, I'm not going to lie to you. Unless something crazy happens, I think this game will kind of give them the good starting point that they need because their next two games are going to be where a lot of talk comes into play. They're playing Oregon and then they're playing USC, which if you know about USC, you're playing against one of the front runners for the Heisman, and Caleb Williams. They've been talking about Caleb Williams all season long. And I think, like I said, these two games are definitely going to be kind of like the talking points for the Buffaloes this season. So that's what I got on that. Not really a whole lot to really get into on that level. That's mainly all I had for the sports side of things. So we're going to roll through these. This is the first, and this has been the first time in a while that I'm going to have like my list and kind of follow everything that I have as topics. So the fidgeting fixes has been continued. The nice Ripo company Ono has created yet another fidgeting accessory in their Ono roller lineup. It is called the Ono Roller Junior, but it is a different twist. So if any of you have been keeping up, I did have one before that is the Ono Roller, and it had kind of a plasticky, rubbery feel to it. How I compared it is it was almost like a Nerf, like the Nerf bullets that you had back in the day. It's still out now, but if you know what that feels like, that was kind of what that Ono Roller felt like. So it had kind of a rubbery feel to it. It was a nice, decent size. But what Ono did was they decided, okay, we're going to take our original Ono rollers and we're going to make a junior version of it. And when I made it, I was like, okay, cool. They brought them out, no big deal. When I saw the colorways and I saw red, I was like, sorry, just take my money, sign me up. You've gotten another customer with this one. So as of right now, I currently own 4 Ono rollers. I have the original Ono roller in black. I have the Ono Steel, the regular size. I have the Ono Steel Mini, and I have the Ono Junior. Between the 4 of them, I will openly say that for size, I personally prefer having the Junior that I have now with me, and I prefer the Mini. The Mini I probably like the most because it's a good fit to the hand. It doesn't matter if you have a large hand or a small hand. It's a very good roll. All of them roll very well. The biggest factor with using them that I've learned is just they're all quiet. So that's probably my winning formula to using them more than anything else. I will say that my OGs, my regular Ono, I still will carry that with me in a minute. And the steel one is like most people have gotten so used to me. Like if I go somewhere, they're guaranteed to see one of them with me. They don't even ask. In some instances, it's always fun because somebody be like, hey, you got a spare? Can you bring it with you? Because I may need it while I'm walking around, while I'm doing whatever. Because when I first got these, no one really was understanding the concept of why was I so attached to using them until they used it. And they're like, okay, this isn't that bad. This is not like the worst thing in the world. And like I said, I keep one available with me. And with doing a podcast, I'm always remembering to use my koosh ball, which I've talked about that a couple times on the podcast as well. Like now, I think I found kind of like a secret way to do my my sound check basically, which is, always a fun thing to be able to do. So, yeah, just getting the simplicity down and just not putting myself in this like stressed out, trippy position with what I'm working through or what I'm working to handle or whatever. So, that's that on that. Let's see, what else do we have? Next up, I've already talked about fidgeting fixes. Journal planning unpacked. So any of you who have been keeping up with the podcast know that I'm a big advocate of journaling, big advocate of writing, big planning addict. I don't give her enough credit, or I talk about her from time to time on the podcast, but huge shout out to Special, who has been like my accountability partner, my ride or die when it comes to planning. Another friend of mine, and I don't give her enough credit, and I think we're going to get our groove back into planning again. my friend Angie, like I said, we had our brief moment of not conversing, and now we've come back around, and it's like, hey, look, things went how they went. Life is short. Let's make things be what they are, and not take ourselves through a whole lot of hoopla that's unnecessary. My planning flow has been kind of like, it ain't been the best. Like, I've done the easy part. I'm carrying the planner around, even with the transition, because I may have made you all aware, I may not have, but I had to kind of split 2023 into two planners, because my first planner was consumed with a lot of just note taking, and I wasn't using the planner in its right form. Because any of you if you may or may not know, I'm a member, or I'm a fan of bullet journaling. So I do bullet journaling, where you pretty much have flexibility, leniency to you plan out how you want to plan out things in your planner. There are some good things to that, but probably the bad thing that you don't hear about, or is not really addressed enough, is because you have such flexibility on how you can plan in a bullet journal, you will have people, me being one of them, who just uses the planner in its normalcy, and I don't take into consideration that, okay, maybe I need to just like not just have it be a all-purpose planner. And I'm still like anything, I'm still working on that as we speak. So it still becomes an adjustment at time of knowing, like, hey, you can't just sit here and write every single thought or idea in your planner and that be the end of it. So I'm just getting into that groove of learning, like, with this planner, to really use it for weekly reflections, doing my daily log of like what I'm working on, what I'm going to work on, what I've already done, and rapid logging, and still getting into that true groove with bullet journaling and perfecting it in its proper form. While also, and I've also shared this a few times and found that this is the unwritten/written formula that I'm having to stick with, which is logging the things that you're doing is fine, but the added bonus is making sure that the things you're doing have a time slot or a time place in you doing them. Case in point, today, obviously, I'm doing my podcast, and I'm a little early on doing it because of time, but my time frame is from 12 to 2. So I want to be sure, like, okay, if I'm going to put record podcast, I need to be aware of 12 to 2 in doing that podcast. Also, and I'm still reading, I'm almost in the home stretch with this book, Transforming Your Habits, which is kind of the baby or the pre-build to Atomic Habits, both written by James Clear. He talks about how your habits should go on your calendar. So things that you're doing, like if you're working out, what time are you working out? If you're journaling, what time are you journaling? A bad habit or a bad process that I follow is I put from 5 to 7 that I'm going to work out, plan, journal, all this other stuff. And it's like each thing needs to have its own separate window. So those are accountability tips. And even me saying this to you all, sharing it, is kind of like a personal reminder for myself, and making sure that I'm in the proper planning preparation space with doing that. So working through that as well. Next up, I was glad, but also like in shock that I found it. But I'm definitely glad that I found it, because I think it lit the fire back in me to get back to designing again. So if you've been following the podcast, about 2 years ago, I bought this accessory called the Tour Box. When I first bought it, I really didn't hear much about it. I didn't know how it would be beneficial, how it would be useful. Would I really be using it in its proper form? Fast forward, now Tour Box, I believe, has 2 or 3 versions of their Tour Box. One of which, so there's the Tour Box Neo and there's the Tour Box Elite. I believe I have the Neo. One of them, I'm not sure. The version that I got, I think, was like literally the early prototypes. It does not have a USB port on the front of it. Or if it's sitting on the table and you're looking over it, at the top of the box, there on many of the models I've seen, they have a USB port. Mine does not. Not really the end of the world, but it's one of those things that's like, it would be good to have this in the event that type of ordeal. I'm only saying that because they made a newer version that now has the ability is Bluetooth. Now, Bluetooth is cool, but the pricing that they want for the Bluetooth one, I'm like, I don't think this is really working out. Why I'm sharing all of this is because yesterday I reconnected it to my laptop, and this is the first time it's officially / unofficially been connected to this laptop. And I connect it, and as soon as I connect it, it comes up with this message saying, hey, would you like to trade in your current tour box and get the new tour box for, you can get $80 for the one you have, and then you can purchase the new one. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't really like this sales pitch that y'all giving me, because if I'm understanding correctly, I'm going to send you the one I have now that I paid twice the price for. I paid about like $170 for mine. I'm going to send this to you all. And then you're going to give me the ability to save $80 or get a code to redeem $80 off of the new one. And the new one is already like $200 something. And I'm like, I don't really see the benefit of that. Like, even as much as I record podcasts, the one thing that I've always been emphatic about is I will not put myself in a position to do a wireless microphone podcast. And the reason why is because you don't want to do a podcast in that recording format and audio gets, like, you have less control of your audio. And in designing, it's the same way. Like, you don't want to lose control of your designing or your creativity. I'm sharing all of this also because now in the last couple of weeks, I've been putting more dent or more work into my Udemy courses that I purchased a couple of months ago. And I set a goal with my teammates or colleagues with RVA Works to finish my Udemy course on the basics of Illustrator, InDesign, and Photoshop. I want to get that done by the beginning of October. And as far as how timing and pacing has been going with that, we should be on pace to get that completed. So I'm excited about that. I'm definitely looking forward to it. I've learned quite a bit with design. I mean, with InDesign and with Illustrator so far. Like, I've used InDesign, I've talked about this a little bit before. I've used InDesign pretty consistently, but I'm not using it to its maximum. I've used it to, like, okay, let's put different layers down, put my image for whatever I'm doing my podcast about, and then from there throwing in, kind of making sure everything looks properly and reducing the opacity and stuff like that. So, been just working on those things as well. This morning, and I've had this conversation, or I've had other people come up with this conversation with me, and you all are going to be privy to getting to hear about this as well. The idea of the thought has been presented to me of possibly trying or doing becoming a motivational speaker. How do I feel about that? One, it makes me feel good to realize that a lot of people value what I say. And it's not even about the simple fact of, oh, I got this was said because someone else said it. It has nothing to do with that. It more so just has to do with the fact that a lot of messages or a lot of thoughts that have come about just from the simple fact of me just being me. And I'm a person, one thing that I can personally and openly say is that a lot of the lessons or a lot of the messages that I've obtained or gained over time has been just from listening. And I think for a lot of people it's a challenge, but it's something that I've learned to not do. And that is, I don't like to step over what someone has said because people need that space to be heard. Now, let me be clear, not sound like I'm perfect with doing this. There are those times where I may be in the midst of what you're saying and I might say, let's think about that for a second. Because a lot of times we're talking and in the process of what we're saying, we're not understanding what we're saying or why we're saying it. Why this is relevant and why this is a topic on the podcast is, like I said earlier, my friend who said this, we've known each other for a good amount of years, and I'm just me. And I know it's like one of those things like, I mean, you're just you, but I don't think you understand when you say things like people really get it or hear it. And this is me paraphrasing a little bit. But I've had other friends or other folks who I know that have said and or addressed the same thing with me. And I'm sitting there like, maybe this is something I need to look into. What makes it even more of a topic or discussion is one of my followers, or not followers, but someone who I follow and really keep track of her routine and what she does is Mel Robbins. I am a big Mel Robbins fan, and I've talked about this endless times on the podcast, and you're going to understand why in a moment when we get to pass the message. But I'm just here to say, like, I'm honored and I appreciate it. Two, her sharing it and even the information she's given me offline, I'm going to utilize the tips. I've been more attached to, which I've talked about on the show a couple of times, using my commonplace notebook to write out ideas related to this. But more than anything, I just need to be in a space to give the effort to it along with the other things that I'm doing. And I think that's what my current aha moment has been, is like the opportunity, the moment you have, the time you have, the ability you have, whatever you can work on it. And it's going to require you to do a few things a little differently. One of which is, if you think it ain't a big deal, put the phone down. Like, I'm always talking about that all the time. And it's ironic because I would say I haven't. I've been back and forth with using the app Workflowy, but I'm using Workflowy again, which many people have heard me talk about all the time. And on Workflowy, you can have it show anything that you've completed or any task that you've completed. Because what I'm doing now is I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go through this, read everything over, take out what I've already said, check it off or whatever. And I had something come up that I already had previously checked off on another podcast. And it said doom video scrolling / watching. And I'm like, oh, this is digital minimalism all over again. So learning that balance and knowing, hey, I need to use this application to get what I need, but also not being overly consumed by the application and learning that sweet spot. And this kind of almost goes into the next topic I have about tech battles, where it comes to like utilizing and valuing tech for what it is, but not letting tech overwhelm you. This is going to be a fun little layer to talk about early, because I have found that many of my friends or folks who are friends of my friends that have connected me with friends have come to me and or talked about interest in the tech world. And I'm going to go into this very honest and very open. There are endless doors that you can get into to get into tech. We all know that. You have to understand what you're trying to do, as well as how you're trying to go about doing it. I've said this to two individuals who I've personally had conversations with via messaging, is as hard of a mindset as it is to shift from, do not go in with the dreaded, infamous 6-figure mindset. And the reason I'm saying that is you're going to get 6 figures if you are putting in the work to become a 6-figure employee. But if you look at the internet tells this story. And this is probably going to run back into the video scrolling and watching and doom socializing, all of that stuff. Online, folks will tell you they're a multi six-figure income person or whatever. If you're an influencer, your sources of income do not just come from working for a company only. There are other avenues, there are other lanes you're pulling income to get to those numbers. I'm not judging it. I'm not knocking it. I'm just telling people so that folks can be educated and be aware. When I hear people talk about going into tech or wanting to start tech, the first thing that I always tell them, even if you may not want to do it or you might not even think it's worth doing, start in help desk, start in service desk, start at desk side support, start at troubleshooting. Any company that has like a troubleshooting role or something that's going to give you the hands-on to understand different departments and different roles, that opens the portal to get you to where you're trying to go. Because you're now going to start connecting with people. You're going to start engaging and conversing within a company, within a process. And then it shows you what you're learning with your role, as well as what others are offering in their skill set or their palette. Because let's face it, everyone's going to have a different plate of skills and talents. That's expected. But it's about what you can learn from not only those people, but what they can learn from you. Because as much as it's said and as much as it's always ping-ponged and talked about, gatekeeping in tech is probably one of the biggest challenges that people face, especially in the Black community. And yes, I'm going there today. And I know I went a little bit off from this motivational speaker, but I want to just say about that, I am definitely going to do more research, do more learning, be a major sponge and open to the possibility of it. Because if it's an opportunity that could lead to learning and connecting, I'm all for it. Because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. So that I'm definitely open to it. But yeah, with tech, it's what you know, it's who you know, it's how you want to get to where you want to go, and how hungry are you at what you're trying to accomplish. If you're coming into it and saying, I want to get into tech because I want to get paid, that's cool. But if you're getting paid but don't know what the heck you're doing, it ain't gonna benefit you. Like, I've seen folks pretty much not even shoot themselves in the foot, but more so like set themselves up for failure because they were knowledgeable, but they didn't have the desire and the interest in doing it. And it shows. Like, I think that's my biggest takeaway that I constantly emphasize is, if it shows, folks will know. And that's really all I got to say on those pieces of those components. So moving into the the title, and let me be clear, because I want to make sure that I'm open and honest with y'all. I did not watch the entire. I would say in probably the last 5 years, maybe longer, I've never sat and fully watched an entire keynote. The only time that I'll do that is if it happens to land on the day that I'm off and I'm like, okay, cool. I have time, I have capability, I have mental capacity. I'm going to give the effort to giving this my undivided attention. But in most instances, it's going to be on usually while I'm at work, or it's usually on at a point of the day that I can't watch it. So I'm not going to be as attached or as pulled into it as people would expect me to be. But I'm still keeping my nose in the air and my ear to the ground as to what's what. And I know nose to the air has nothing to do with this because it doesn't work in the analogy, but just slow walk with me. I pay attention to what's going on. And also between different social media platforms, which I may or may not pull 100% from, you will get a good idea of what happened, even if you didn't see it or didn't get it. So let's politely unpack this and be transparent with how I feel. So they bring out the new devices. I have to make sure I say what I'm going to say without sounding like that person, but I'm also going to be honest with what I'm about to say. I looked at I want to make sure I get, because I have I sent somebody a picture of both sets of phones. So the 15, I don't know, I'm forgetting what the names are there, because they're not doing mini, they're not doing 15 regular, they're doing like one set is like the 15 and the other set is the Pro. And they have it in the smaller size, and then they have it in one is 6.1 inch and the other one is 6.7 inch. All of the screens going to have dynamic islands, which, I mean, yay, big whoop. If you're into that, that's cool. The dynamic island has a much more impactful usage, which, I mean, that's fine. But then even more ironic, like I have an iPhone, I have a 12 Pro. The 12 Pro, I can still see like the island is still used, but it's just in a different form, because the island, instead of it being the actual space where the island would be, it's below the cutout that's on the iPhone 12. But I mean, if that's one of those things, again, like if you're into those things, that's all well and good, but it's not a big deal. So for the regular iPhone 15, you have black, white, green, yellow, and pink. Weirdest color combination, but hey, it is what it is. And then for the Pro, they went with black, white, blue, and silver or titanium. They did bring out a new watch. I'm trying to think of what other stuff they talked about. They're looking to get more capacity or more usage out of Find My. Again, I didn't like. And I'm saying this wholeheartedly, like this is not even like on some Apple fanboy, like, oh, you gonna fanboy it and talk about the great stuff. No, it was very underwhelming. Like, to reiterate, I've had my iPhone 12 Pro since 2021, so over 2 years. I could easily look into getting the 15, but I just don't see anything that's compelling me to get it. Let alone I've been back and forth with this topic. Do I really want to sit and get a phone based on features that aren't going to be wow factors or big deals? They did bring up that the button, the slider on the side is going to have more capabilities for people, which, on one hand, that's cool, but on the flip side, most people don't even use half of the features that their phone is capable of doing. Like, until about a year or so ago, the one feature that I use on my iPhone now that I like more than any other feature is I added an accessibility button that always stays on the screen, but it's dim. It's at a low enough opacity so that I see that it's there, but it's not impacting my regular usage. And why it's important is, if I want to take a screenshot on my phone, all I have to do is tap that twice. I don't have to go looking for the volume button and the power button, and I got to press them at the same. Ain't nobody got time for all of it. Like, I would rather, like, simplicity is much easier than complexity. So, like I said, I've looked at it. I've seen the stories. I didn't really find anything exciting. Like I said, I may get a 15 Pro. I may get the big boy, but I'm not in this like ooh and ah factor to get one. Like, I will forewarn you now. A lot of iPhone users, if they get the new phone, they're getting it for the influence and for the content. But the honest folks who purchase or do reviews are going to tell you, if you have a 12, if you have a 13, if you have a 14, don't waste your time. And I'm not making any decisions for anybody. As a consumer, you do what's in your best interest, but it's not pushing. It's really not pushing the presentation. Like, I have to, like, it's like, oh man, you gotta go out and get this one. This is it right here. It ain't it. It really ain't it. And I'm a big tech person, but that is probably like the tech. It ain't really a tech wow factor for me on that level. Like, as crazy as it sounds, like it wouldn't even be a bad thing of me doing it. I could literally go and get like the new Galaxy that comes out and I'll be fine with it. Like I'll keep all my other Apple devices. I'll stay in the ecosystem on that level, but keep my MacBook. But as far as for texting, I'll give me my Android. I will gladly use Android. And I just don't, I've talked about this on the show before, and I'm going to keep saying this. Doesn't matter which device you have. It's about the developer. If the app ain't developed for it, it don't matter. So that's what I have for that. All right. Past the message, we got a pair. So I want to make sure that I allot the time for both of these messages while I have them, because just you learn by living. And when people can give you a good message, you definitely got to take it for what it is. And this is an example of like a message coming home. So I'm gonna play the audio for both videos. The first one is from my friend Deion, who I don't know if you listen to the podcast, but if you do, and if you have, and we may talk, I'm talking about this with you offline. You need to be on the show. Like we need to sit down and have like a music session, kind of like our backstory connection, just chop it up about life and mental check-in and everything. But hey, I'm one to say that I'm not going to push people in a position if you want to do it, it's open, like the seat is open. That's all I'm going to say on that. So I'm going to play the video and then we'll kind of do our takeaway, and then I'll share the second video and we'll wrap it up.
Beautiful Friday to all of my family and friends. You guys know I don't normally come on here and talk like that, so that means it's something. And you know how when older people be like, oh, they put something on my heart, I gotta share it. Well, this is one of those mornings, and I truly feel like God wanted me to just share, like, hey, take a step back and thank God for the small things. Thank God for allowing you to wake up this morning, allowing your family to wake up this morning. If yesterday was a bad day, claiming today will be a better day. Speaking positivity into your life. When you're always surrounded by negativity or always speaking negative in your life, that's what it's going to be, a bunch of negativity. So take a step back, thank God, and speak positivity into your life. And yeah, everything's going to be okay. Happy Friday, y'all.
When I tell you, a lot of people a lot of people will put messages online, and I'm like, okay, I got the message. It's going to hit home, and I just kind of go about my day. This one, when I heard it, I was like, why am I sitting here having an emotional breakdown? And it's like, it's a simple message, but it's like we really take things for granted, because it's like none of this was promised us. We got it from working, from being thankful, from life being how life is, and we were given it with a purpose and a plan. And you really, and the takeaway that I shared, and she said it already, is take a step back, thank God for the small things, surround yourself with positive people. Like if you're around negative folks, there's a problem. Like I said this at the beginning, like if more people are taking your cup and drinking from your cup, instead of saying, hey, let me pour a little bit into you, or let me give you a little bit more. Like you'll hear folks using the phrase, my cup runneth over. And it's like, okay, yeah, sure. But are you really helping people like get their cup filled to like the best version of them? And we really just got to put ourselves in the right space with the right people. Like really take time and just be thankful. Like I cannot emphasize that enough. So that's message number 1. Message number 2, as I mentioned earlier, I am a huge Mel Robbins fan. And it was a video, it popped up on my page. I saw it and I was like, I need to write these down. I was going to put them in my commonplace notebook. Didn't have a chance to get to it. Personal, just me being me. But then I literally just found a video and I was like, all right, I need to share this with you all. So this is video number 2.
There are 3 lessons I learned this year, which was one of the hardest years of my life. And I want to share them with you because I don't want you to have to experience the hardest year of your life to learn these lessons. These lessons are so important. Lesson number 1, your life is always trying to teach you something. And it's moments of friction and discomfort that have the greatest lessons of all. And if you don't learn it, life is just going to get louder and louder, and eventually it's going to hit you with a sledgehammer because lessons repeat until you learn them. Lesson number 2 from the hardest year of my life. Your excuses are bullshit. Behind every excuse is fear. That's all that's there. So you can disappear any excuse and you can address any fear with action. And number 3, change is not easy. Change is very hard. That's why so many of us struggle with it. But even though change isn't easy, it is always worth it and you're capable of it.
When I tell y'all that message really brought it home, we can pack it up right here and go home. Like, we done. We are done. Life is always teaching you something. And it's so real because life will spin the block on you. Like, folks, a lot of us jokingly use the term or phrase life be lifing. But a lot of times life don't be lifing. Life be throwing lessons, and you got to be in a position to realize, are you ready to receive the message or the lesson, or are you ready to block it like you did the other 30, 40 times that it came around? All of the excuses you put in front of you are full-blown bullshit. They are definitely not. You just making them just to make them. I wore this bracelet, not even thinking of it until listening to that message again. And the exact phrase, which has been kind of my mantra in so many words, is nobody cares. Work harder. No one really cares at all. Like, you just got to keep working. And her last point, change is not easy, but it is always worth it, and you're capable of it. Change is constant. You're going to go through changes. You're going to go through adjustments. You're going to have adversity. You can't let adversity win every single time. Sometimes you got to take adversity by the horns and say, I'm running this. This is what we doing. And own it. Own it, stand on it, live with it, sit in it, be okay with it. Yes, I'm getting into the microphone and I'm battling these sound effects of the sweet spot. But I really want people to understand, like, hone in on it, like zone in, lock in. And I'm going to add my own pastor message to this episode. And that is, when you think that things are off, it's not that they're off. You just got to turn it on. And whatever it is, you know what it is when you need to get it done. Case in point. When here's some information. Gotta love when the watch does what you didn't ask it to do. Case in point. If you're finding yourself off track with what you need to do, and I might have shared this audio before. I'm not going to share it now, but it's a message that has really sat with me. Do the things that are going to make you uncomfortable. Throw the phone in airplane mode. Disconnect from people who are not of benefit or not of worth right now. Like, I literally kept this as a note, and I always go back to this note. Put your phone on airplane mode. Allow yourself to be bored. Write with nothing to prove. Walk with nowhere to go. See where your ideas take you as you think like a builder instead of a consumer. If you scroll, do it with intention, do it to connect, and do it to explore. But don't do it if you're bored. And that's what it comes down to. you have to know what you're trying to do and how you want to go about doing it. And the biggest add on to that as I wrap this show up is you're literally going to find yourself every once in a while having to go into what I call deep focus. I've talked about it a little bit because I'm waiting to read this book, Deep Work by Cal Newport. A spinoff or an attachment to deep work is deep focus. I've been following a group, Space Time Monotasking. Shout out to them. Like they've been motivational in multiple ways without even trying, just giving good information. And one of the ladies from their group was a guest on a podcast, and she talked about deep focus. And I'm like, I gotta tap into that deep focus again. Because when you do deep focus, folks don't understand. Like you don't have time for all the dumb stuff. You're focused on what you need to do, and you don't care who's in your way to get what you need to get done, because you know you got to get it done. It's non-negotiable. So I thank you all for listening. I appreciate any and every amount of support that I've received on this podcast. Anyone's feedback, anyone's input always helps me become better with creating content on this space. And I hope to be back with you all again next week. I think I'm going to see if I'm going to do this, but I'm supposed to be, and I'm not going to say it's supposed to be, I'm going to a friend of mine, her son plays soccer, and I want to go see him play. I've been talking, because I always talk every year. I'm like, man, I want to go see kids play soccer. It's fun. And also it's like a good chance to like get out the house and do something different outside of your comfort zone. And this is definitely an outside of my comfort zone, because it's like you come out there with a chair, buy some water, buy some snacks, and just sit down and just enjoy the moment. And most of all, the thing with soccer that's so crazy is something can happen so fast that you literally can miss it if you're in the middle of a phone call, or heaven forbid and I've seen people do this where they have like their work laptop and they doing stuff. And I'm like, right now, that is not important. Like, I mean, I get it. It's an opportunity because you're trying to get stuff done, but it can wait. Like, it really can wait. But yes, I love you all. I appreciate you all. Anyone who's been there with me through ups, downs, transparency, when I didn't want to hear it, whatever the case may be, I appreciate every single one of y'all. And until next time, this is the Past signing out. Y'all take it easy. Another episode is completed. Thank you all for listening. If you want to check out the podcast, you can go to buzzsprout.com. If you're looking to do podcasts, you can go to buzzsprout.com. To get to my podcast, you'll go to the pastbtpod.buzzsprout.com. If you're looking at getting a microphone, I always suggest getting the Blue Yeti X. That is the microphone that I use. If you're starting off and you need something more affordable, Samsung Meteor, it's a worthwhile investment. And there are other microphones that are going to be simple enough. My big suggestion I tell everyone whenever looking for a microphone, be sure that your microphone has the ability to have you listen to your audio or listen to yourself as you're talking. It will make a big difference in your editing and your podcast. Also, most importantly, and I tell people this is a tip offline, but I'm giving this in the final listen or at the end of the show. Drink water while recording, and also just drink water in general. But drink water while you're recording, and the reason why, you'll be surprised. All right. See y'all on the next show.